In my last video, we have made these little page tabs together. They are made out of some paper scraps, some leftovers, some other bits and pieces, tiny pieces of lace, and so on. And these are meant to put on the edges of junk journal pages to have a nice decoration there, or to categorize your junk journal if you want to label them and have different categories. That is also a possibility to use those page tabs. And you have obviously been really thrilled about that video. I want to thank you that so many of you have watched that and you have left so many nice comments. Thank you very much for that. And because of your ideas and what you have posted to social media, I have seen a lot of different variations of this idea. I came to another idea and I want to make another variation of page tabs today. But the main ingredient of those shall be lace and fabric today. As you can see, I have here some leftover pieces. Well, to be honest, this I wouldn't consider as a leftover because it's so long and it's so much, but this is basically something that I have just taken out from my drawer. I have a little, portion of my drawer where I have things like this, where I can then open the drawer, pull this, snip something off, and then use that. So you can use, of course, also tinier pieces. I know that some of you have a stash of those snippets of lace. You could use that. It doesn't have to be lace. You could also use only fabric for this idea. So this is what I have here. And then I also have this thing from my scissors, but we don't need that. I'm sorry. So I have this. This is just a leftover piece from an old pillowcase. I want to use this material as a base in a second. I've chosen this because I can tear this really easily. You could also use a thicker and sturdier fabric, of course. I mean, it is sturdy, but it is easy to tear. But what I'm trying to say is you could use your scissors to cut it off. Yeah, but I like to have, what's the word? Tearable fabric, so fabric that you can tear, because then it's easier. So we are going to need a relatively long strip of something like that. And then I also have some photos here. I've already cut those out, which I want to use today. These come from my shop. This is a digital printable ephemera pack. It's called Vintage Photo Strips. And it has all of these little photos here in a really, really vintage style. If you are interested in this printable, I will link it down below for you in the description box, of course. And I also want to say a very, very big thank you to all of you who have already purchased this item. It is really popular, obviously, and that makes me, of course, really, really happy. I'm really happy how these turned out, especially the colors are really nice. They are not only this all the same. Some are, more sepia, and some are more brownish, and that makes it, that it is really versatile and that you can use these photos for many different projects. When you purchase them in my shop, they come on full sheets, so there's a total of 200 photos in this item, and then you can decide how you want to cut these. They are called vintage photo strips because you can, of course, cut them into strips, and then you can decide if you want to have 3 photos or 4 photos or 5 in this direction. Is that correct? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. So that you can also turn these portions of the printable into belly bands or pockets or whatever you want. So if you just cut a strip like this, for example, it's just cut like so that you then have the 4 photos in a row. Then you can easily turn that into a belly band, just back that with something else, or put some tiny pieces of paper or something, like, a little collage, or you could collage in between of the photos here, and then you have your belly band ready to go. I'm just realizing that the sun is really bothering me. I will jump off from my chair for a second and you know, this makes me drives me crazy. Okay, so here we go. This is way better. So yeah, if you want to have these, the link is down below in the description box. But alternatively, if you don't have a printer or if you don't want to use this printable, you could also, of course, cut some images from a magazine or from a book or something like that. You could also use the Photo Booth or Photomatic photos by Tim Holtz. These ideology photos, I think you know those. Those would work as well, of course. And what I then also have, but I think that is optional. If you don't have stamps, then please do it without stamps. I've just chosen some stamp sets from my stash. This one here is Papillon CMS 106. I want to use this background stamp because it has some like tinier elements, but also some more intense and more, yeah, you can see this is way thicker. The font is way thicker than the rest, and I really like this combination. Then I have this one here, Mixed Media CMS 125. I want to use this stamp with the dots here in a second. And I've chosen this, etc. CMS 302. And I think I will use this and also this, because here we have this like handwriting, and here there's also a portion which has a more thicker font, which I want to use for making some contrast on my little page tabs. All of these stamp sets are by Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz. And then, of course, we need something to stamp for yeah, the contrasting things. I want to use this black VersaFine Clear ink. I'm also going to use some frayed burlap oxide ink to give my page tabs a little bit more brown, but you know, you can basically use what you want. I then have some Scorched Timber Distress ink here just for inking the edges of my photos. But please use what you want or what you have. Then I also have some buttons for the last step of this project. I want to decorate my page tabs with some tiny buttons. And I have some white acrylic paint mixed with some water for making some splatters. And oh, what I also have here is my tiny attacher, and I will also use my sewing machine today. But if you don't have a sewing machine, then you could also hand sew that, or you could even do the whole thing just with glue. That would also be possible. Then I want to mention who inspired today's project, and that is one of the lovely people from my Facebook group, Junk Journal Deutsch. Here you can read the name of the Facebook group. So Deutsch, that means German. This group in the meantime has grown into a more like international group. So if you're interested in joining my Facebook group, the link is down below in the description box. The most people there are German and they write in German, but you can of course use the translation button so that you can translate that into English. And if you can't translate something into German and want to post something in the group, then of course feel free to just write in English, and then you know the German people can use the translation button so that everyone can understand each other. So there's a woman called Manuela Horvath, and she brought me to this idea I want to try today, because as you can see here on her photo, she has so that you understand what happened here, she has seen my last video, and after that she has created these page tabs with the idea from the other video. And as you can see, she has used my vintage photo strips here as well, so this printable from my shop. And when I saw this, I was so amazed, and there have been so many ideas. You have thrown so many page tab ideas to the social media world that is just amazing. And this is only one example of how gorgeous this community is, because yeah, this inspiration that we can get from each other is just so giant, and I really love that. And when I saw this, I was like, why the heck haven't I used my own photos here? But like, she has done it. And then I was like, I have to try that out because this looks just so amazing. And when I saw this page tab here in the corner, I also saw that she has used really like pretty long strips of lace. And when I saw that, I thought, why can't we make the base for the page tab just from fabric and lace and then add the photos on top. Is that possible? And because of that, I have chosen the things I've just shown you, which I want to use for making these. Because look, she has here also some paper pieces, and those are stamped, and they have sometimes a relatively big contrast, like with this black and the lighter color. It's not totally white, but you can see what I mean. Like, let's do it like this and call it black and white. Of course, this is not totally white, but it is black, and you know, that gives contrast and that gives these little accents which you can get on a project. And I want to try that out, meaning I will not use these tiny pieces. I will not use what we've used for making these, because, you know, then it would be like perhaps too similar. But I want to have this contrast as well, and that's what I want to do with my stamps and the black ink. So let's try if that can work. So let's start with taking a piece of this material here from the pillowcase. And I already found out in my German video, I've just recorded that before this one, that 6 centimeters is a good width for me, for my taste. So I'm going to tear 6 centimeters here, and I'm trying to tell you what that is in inch. Always a challenge. So that is 1, 2, oh, that is easy. That is approximately 2.5 inch here. Because I thought when I take this strip and then, why is this so short? Well, we can make two. So I have taken this, and to determine the width, I have just folded it in half like this, so that these ends meet here, because that is what I later on want to have on my page as well. Meaning I want to have pieces of this on my page, so that then the page is sandwiched in between of the layers of the fabric here, yeah, so that I can easily glue that to my page. So that means I have to imagine that this is the width, and that I also have the possibility to put the photo on top. So if you want to craft along with me, then please take the photo or another thing that you want to use as a focal point, hold that here to the page tab, and then try to decide about the proportion and especially this width here. So we are going to take this, and I think I'm going to tear a second piece. What is this? Let me just check how many photos could fit on here, because I want to have them there later, and then I want to cut that into pieces so that I then have several of these at the same time ready to go for my journal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's make 5. What I'm trying to say is, the longer you make this, the easier your job is, yeah? I mean, you can't take 3 meters, perhaps, but the longer you make this, the easier it is, because we are going to do all of the steps here on the whole thing, and then it's like, you know, it's like you would make a masterboard or something, and make everything that you want to do on the sheet, and then later on cut it. Or like, yeah, this first thing is like a snippet roll. If you want to have a name for that, I would say it's like a snippet roll. Why haven't I mounted the stamp to this acrylic block before I inked it up? I don't know. Meaning you're going to make a strip and then we cut that. So what is that? Is that then a page tab snippet strip? Or what is that then? I have no idea. But if this was longer, of course you could repeat all of these steps on like a longer material, and then you have more page tabs in the end. Do you know what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense. So this was straight burlap oxide ink. You could also take the ink or whatever you like or have. I want to keep these really neutral, because until now I don't know into which journal they will go. Meaning, if I later on decide that I perhaps need some red or some blue or some other colors, then I can just take my neutral strips and throw some ink on top, or I can splatter, or, ooh, I'm sorry, or whatever I want. but in this moment I want to have them as neutral as possible. That's why I have chosen frayed burlap and why I choose black here. And why I also have chosen my neutral pieces of scraps of lace and fabric. But of course, if you already know into which journal you want to put these, then you could also go with the colors of the journal, of course. And what I'm trying here now is I'm trying to get a nice background at the one hand, some contrast on the other hand, and I want to have in mind that I will fold this later like this, meaning this edge here is going to be shown in the end, and everything that is here in the middle is partially visible later, meaning I don't care if I don't have so much stamping here on this edge or here on this edge, because we will probably later on don't see so much of that. And the reason why I want to, later on, that makes perhaps more sense, but I'm trying to explain this because perhaps you have taken out your materials already and perhaps you're crafting along with me right now. Then it's perhaps good for you to know, so that you know where to stamp if you want to have it like I have it here. Because imagine we would cover this strip here with more layers of lace and fabric and make like a little snippet strip or something. And if we would then put the materials over here, I'm sorry, meaning if I would take something and I would sew that on there or glue it on, and it would go around this edge, then this would get really stiff and it would get probably hard to fold. So that is why I want to leave this whole area here empty, so that I don't have lace or anything else over here. And that's also the reason why I pay attention where I stamp now. So if I, for example, have this stamp, I stamp that approximately to the middle here, where later on the fold is going to be, so that we can see the stamping there and that we have the nice contrast there as well. And I don't care about if I have no stamping here. Hopefully that makes sense. And this looks really busy, but in a second this will really calm down. I promise you. So, okay, when we have that, shall we perhaps also use, here's this little round stamp. This comes from the Etc. set, CMS 302. I'm just thinking I want some darker spots here, which are like, really black, or let's say as black as they can get when you stamp to a light piece of fabric. Of course, this is not completely black. Okay, so then I'm quickly going to dry this a bit with my heat gun, because the VersaFine Clear ink dries not so fast. And if you stamp with oxide ink on fabric, I made the experience that it takes a while until it's dry as well. And by the way, if you want to put your fabric page tabs into the washing machine, I don't know why you would do that, but this is of course only the black is permanent now. Yeah, you can stamp with oxide ink or distress ink onto fabric, as you can see, but this is not permanent. So if you would throw water on this, or for example if you want to make some splatters later or add wet mediums, then only the black would be permanent, and the oxide ink, or if you had used distress ink, then it would be like reactivatable. So if you want to have that in mind, if you choose when you choose the ink for stamping, perhaps you want to have that in mind if you want to add some wet mediums later or not. So then this strip looks like this. And by the way, if you want to have something really simple, you could also already stop here, take this, fold it in half, cut little pieces off, and you would already have some really interesting page tabs. I think this is an idea if you need something quick. Imagine that this, what is in between of my fingers, was cut off, and you would put that to a page. That would look absolutely wonderful, and every piece would look different with this method. Ich meine, that is German, I'm sorry. I mean, this is really easy, and it's really fast, but in my eyes, it's really efficient somehow. And if you need something fast, then here you go. But we want to take this and go a step further, so I'm going to quickly pick up my sewing machine. Okay, so here we go. I have this strip here now, and I want to place this to my sewing machine now, but I have in mind that I don't want to have fabric or lace pieces in the middle here. So if it helps you, you can, of course, where's my pen now? Well, let's just make a fold. You can see that as well. If you're not able to eyeball that, then just, you know, fold it, press it here, and then open it. And then you can see here that the middle is here. You could even make a little tear. I mean, that doesn't matter. We wouldn't, I mean, this is interesting later. So that doesn't influence the result. So that you know that here is the middle. And when you then place that to your sewing machine, that you can pay attention that here in the middle, we will not sew anything on. If you don't have a sewing machine, please use glue, or you can of course also hand sew this. And now I'm first going to take a piece of lace, which is pretty long, as you can see, so that I can get a base layer on here. And I place this here, and this is also really translucent, as you can see here, hopefully. I mean, I think you can see better what I'm doing than I can see it myself. It's really hard to film this. So I have this here now, so the middle is free. And then I put this down. And as you can see, this is overlapping. So the lace is longer than this is, no, it's wider than the fabric is. But that doesn't matter. It looks interesting in the end. So why do I have zigzag here now? I want to have a running stitch. But of course you can alternate that as well. So I'm just going to sew along here and sew the lace to the fabric. And then here in the end, just going to cut this off, and I cut this off what is too long, so that I then can use that on the other side. And now I'm doing something and that is perhaps in the end makes more sense than now. I am going to take this and I make one layer here on the right side of my strip, but only one layer. I will explain later why I do that. And here I think I want to go with some zigzag so that it gets more contrast here and that it's more interesting, because this is the only layer that I want to add here. I tell you in a second why. So this is not long enough, so let me see what we can find to add here. Perhaps this little thing. So I want to also show you some variation of this, meaning what you sew on here. It doesn't have to be the same for the whole strip, because we will cut this into pieces later anyway, and then it looks more interesting when you have different materials. So let's cut this off as well. And now my right side here is already done. So I'm going to take this and flip to the left here again, or switch to the left, I don't know. Pay attention to only the left side of this strip. And now I'm going to add smaller things. So if I, for example, have a tiny piece like this, I take this and sew this on like you would do that on a snippet roll or something similar as well. I stop here before this thing ends, and then I'm taking the next little piece here so that I can get, yeah, something like a collage or cluster look here. Just like this. What else do we have here? Perhaps a piece of this little, oh, that is, oh, I can't tear it. Let's use some scissors to cut this off. I mean, you could also, of course, use the weirdest pieces here. If you have something like this from some other project left over, then, you know, don't throw that away, but you can use it here. If I would do this without the camera, I would use this up and I would cut this into pieces and put the rest on here as well. But that also would make that on each of my page tabs later would be one of these, this one piece of this. And I want to show you different results. So it would make no sense for me, for the sake of this video, to use this up. Do you know what I mean? But if you have these pieces, just cut them and put them here, and that looks nice. I only don't do that because of the video. So instead of that, I'm going to use a piece of this. And you can now also let some pieces peek out here. That looks really nice, I think. I also have this little piece with this, you know, kind of, I think this is some kind of embroidery or something. Hopefully that was the right word for that. But since this is fabric, I want to have something that can overlap there a little bit, so that the top layer is, you know, with these little holes here, and that you can see both. Just like this. And you can also use some like fluffy and torn, strange things. Perhaps a piece of this. Do we have? Oh, look, here is something that has a little bit of brown stuff on it. So why don't we use that as well? And now it looks like this. And now you can, of course, decide if this is already enough for you, or if you want to go another time over this and add more things. And I think I want to do that. And how to decide that? That is easy. You can just feel this. And if this still is really like super flexible, then you can add even more. If it is already stiff, then I would, you know, stop and don't add more. But I think here we can add more of these tiny things, because then the whole thing looks more interesting in the end. And now I do exactly the same thing. I go along here. This is perhaps a little too long. Let's add that here. And I just add more where I think that it looks good. Oh no. You could also include some, you know, loose threads from your sewing machine. So if you are like me and you collect your leftover threads, then you could also take them and make a little nest and sew them on here. That would look, I guess, also really nice. I think I even have my little cup here. Look, this is what I have from, you know, sewing. And then you can, of course, take this, make a little nest, and put that here. But in this case, I would recommend to go over that with a zigzag stitch. So that it is really well attached. So let's take a bit more. I think that looks really good. And perhaps we can put something on here. What do I have here? A tiny piece of something. So that not the thread is the top layer, but the lace here. And I also like to go back and forth with my sewing machine from time to time, because with that you can of course also get some nice contrast, meaning if I'm here at the end and I go back and forth and back, then this line of my sewing gets way more black and way more intense, of course. And that way you can also bring some interest into your pieces just by sewing a little crazy, or alternating between zigzag and a running stitch. Oh, I love this with the thread. That looks so cool. I want to have more thread here. Let me just start again here. And that is also something I really like about something like this, because I haven't thought about the thing with the thread before I started this, because you know, I wanted to keep it simple, and then I didn't think about these simple things, because this is simple, isn't it? To just add this, what you would normally throw into your trash can. And I haven't thought about that. And I already recorded my German video, and I made the experience that you can come up with ideas during the process, especially when it's something like, you know, meditative, like this kind of process. But even in the German video where I found some things that I want to add, I couldn't come up with the idea of using the threads from my sewing machine. That is weird. Because this is, I mean, this is also like black contrast, yeah. Same thing like the reason for the stamping. And if you don't have like threads or something like this, you could also, of course, sew some tiny paper pieces down here. You can use anything that you have, which can be sewn, of course. And if you have other leftovers, then this is the perfect way, I would say, to use those up. Look how cool that looks with these little flowers. Okay, so I think this is good. So I'm going to bring my sewing machine away and turn the camera again. Okay, so here we have another stage of this project where we could say we leave this exactly like it is and fold this cut little pieces. Oh, look how beautiful this looks. Cut little pieces, and then we would have our page tabs ready to go. Another little idea I thought about, I don't, yeah, do I want to make that here? Do that here? I think so. I thought perhaps it's good, perhaps it's not so good, but let us just try that, because I thought, why don't we add an adhesive already? Where is my slim double-sided tape? Because you know, I already made my page tabs for the German video, and this is now like one piece, yeah, and it is handable, and you can touch it, and you have this big piece. But imagine you have it, and then you have cut it, then this is smaller, and of course this is a little flimsy, and even if we later on have the photo on here, it's a little flimsy and perhaps hard to attach. So I thought perhaps it's a good idea to take this, turn it around, take some double-sided tape, and just make sure that we don't have so many threads here that could be in the way, and we can just add a piece of double-sided tape here and on the other side, so that we then later on, when we have cut that, have those pieces of the tape on each tab, and we have a possibility then to bring that into the right place in the journal. I won't use only the tape because that would be, like, you know, not secure enough for me. But with this, you can have something that then sticks to your page immediately. But at the same time, I would use a little bit of additional liquid glue, meaning if I have this there later and I have my pieces like so, and I have cut this, then I can open it, I can remove this protection paper from the double-sided tape. This already sticks, and then I can just put a little bit of glue here and put the page in between, press this together, and then it would make that the tape sticks immediately and the glue can dry while the tab is already in the right position. Do you know what I mean? And that is of course handy if you attach the tape now, and then later on we can just cut that instead of putting tiny pieces of tape to each of the tabs later. And perhaps you wonder why I have put only this one layer of lace here to one side of this whole strip. I have done that because I want to show you that with the other tabs I made, because it's like the same idea behind that. Imagine you have your page tab and this is already turned into page tabs later, and you have your fabric page tab. It makes no difference for what I'm trying to say. And let's imagine that this is the junk journal page where we want to attach the page tab. So then we would do the following thing. We would open that, put glue here and here, and then we would glue that to the page here like so. And when I then look to the page, I have an interesting thing here. And this is like, you know, imagine some journaling here, or even this could be a page or a collage or something like that. And then you have this little interesting thing here, and your eye says to your brain, ooh, that is interesting. This is cool. Look at that. And when you then flip the page, and then this would be the next page. Imagine here was something like a collage as well, for example. And when then here also would be something with the same amount of interest like here, that would bother me totally, because then this would be not so important anymore if the same thing was here as well, or another like bam thing. That's why I left the one part of these page tabs like blank. I only did some stamping here so that I then later on have the possibility that this is more calm, and the other thing is the star of the show. Yeah, so does that make sense? Perhaps only in my head, but perhaps you can agree with that as well. That would calm me down. And here it's the same thing. When we fold this, then this is like the back side of this, and this is like neutral as well, and we have only this little thing but not this bam stuff like here. And another thing is, if we would put a lot of layers here, like we've done it here, and you would fold that then it would get like stiff and really fat. And I don't like that on my pages. So this way you can also avoid some bulk just by decorating only one side and leave the rest like, you know, not blank, but with only one layer or so. You could leave it blank, yeah, only the stamping would work as well. But I think you got me. So then let's take this. And now, of course, we want to pay attention that we put our photos not all in the same direction to this, because we have decorated the left side, meaning if we would put all of the photos now like this, then we could use the page tabs later only in one direction. So we want to make sure that we place some of the photos upside down so that we have page tabs that we can use on left journal pages and page tabs that we can use on right journal pages, so that we can alternate that as well in the end when we put these into a journal. So I'm going to ink the edges of this a little bit. I'm using Scorched Timber Distress ink for that. I think that looks really nice on these strips, but you can use, of course, any other color as well. I want to keep this as neutral as possible, as I said in the beginning. So I have chosen, yeah, you know, a brown, and also a brown which is not a reddish brown, or, you know, just it's brown. You know what I mean? So that I don't have any problems later when I, yeah, for example, if you would take vintage photo and then, I mean, as the ink color, and then later on in the journal you have something where there's reddish brown. I mean, vintage photo is really red, isn't it? When that then doesn't fit, then you could get like a problem. So I can recommend to use something that is really neutral. And of course you could also skip this step. I know that there are some people who don't like to ink edges or something, then just don't do it. So I also try to get this really not so regular, because I don't want to have a frame around the photos. It's just, I basically did that so that I can't see this white from the cutting anymore. So that, you know, it doesn't look so much like a print. But I haven't done that to give the photo a frame. Yeah, so that's why I haven't done it so extremely. So now I want to take this, and instead of just putting that on here and covering all of the interesting things up that we already have here, I want to try to get that photo somehow in between of these things. Then I'm going to take my tiny attacher here just to attach the photo. Now, of course, it can come out here. It's not totally attached. I do that because later on I want to sew over here again to attach the photo to the rest as well. But for this moment, I can leave it just like this. And also, even if these little tiny things are in the face of the woman on the photo here, I don't care about that. Later on, I can just, when I go to my sewing machine, flip that back and sew that on like like the tiniest amount of ruffle thingy, and then it looks good, please believe me. So let's see how many layers we can put over the photo here. I think, oh, this looks good. So that also means if you have used glue, make sure that you don't use too much glue. Oh, perhaps I should have said that before doing this, because you want to be able to put these photo in between of the single layers. I will put this upside down so that we then have also a page tab for a right page later. Just like this. Perhaps another one upside down. And I'm trying to think not too much about this. I'm just trying to find a good position for the stapling. Because here, for example, I think it's better to staple into this piece of lace instead of into the thread, because that holds better. But as I said, this is just to make sure that I can bring that to my sewing machine. It's just for holding this in place. You could even skip this step and just take the loose photos to your sewing machine and sew them on if you're able to do that. But for me, this is easier than everything is in place and I can now just sew over that again. And I will do the following thing now. I will take this to my sewing machine and I will start sewing here on the top. I pay attention that I don't sew into my staples, otherwise I could break the needle of my sewing machine. And when I have something like this, which is in my eyes too much like on the photo, I flip that back or I crumple that a little bit to sew that on so that it just gets shorter. Of course, you could cut this off as well, but I think adding some more texture can't be too bad here. So that's why I want to, you know, do it like this, for example, and then just sew over it. And I go along here with some, you know, crazy stitching, and then we can cut these and then we are nearly finished. Ta-da! And this looks like this. And I did this in one go. And as you can see, with that, you can get some even more interesting areas as well, because when you sew here, and why isn't my camera focusing on this? What the heck? Oh my goodness. Ah, now it works. I'm so sorry. So here you can see I went around here to not sew through the staples here, and with that you can get this interesting stitching here as well. And I think that looks really cool when this is later on in the journal. I mean, those are like tiny details, but I think those tiny details are what makes junk journaling so interesting. So now I'm going to take my scissors and just cut this off, and then later on, when it goes like this into the journal, like this, then it already looks really cool. I am so in love. So okay, let's cut this as well. I can't recommend to tear this because of the threads. I mean, that could be really hard to tear. And oh my goodness, I think I can't say that in English, but if you would tear here, it can happen that, you know, this tear's not the same on each layer, and that you then either accidentally tear in through the photo, or that this can't lay flat in the end anymore, because, you know, I can't say that in English, but perhaps you know what I mean. Sometimes then, you know, the fabric gets like somehow like this, and that is of course not what we want. Do we want, oh yes, we want this so long. This is good. You could even leave more space in between of the photos, of course. Yeah, here the amount of the fabric is not so much what's peeking out here and here. I mean, it's only a little longer than the photo is, but of course you could make this also longer. So like here with this cat picture, looks really cool. Oh, and especially the thread and the cat. Okay, so then when we have that, I want to place these here so that I can see them all at the same time, to be able to add some buttons now, and that I have everything laying here so that it's just easier to attach the buttons. You could of course sew them on. I think it looks really nice if you would now use some embroidery thread or something similar, but if you know me, you know that I now will take some glue, strong glue, bookbinder's glue, to be clear, and I will just glue these on. But imagine you would sew them on with some embroidery thread. Then you could, of course, also hang some tiny things. I mean, you could leave the thread longer and then just add some charms or something similar to the end of the threads. That would look nice as well, I think. But I want to make my life easy here. Perhaps you can hear I still have a rest of my cold. I don't feel so 100% healthy at the moment, and that's why I want to keep things easy. And perhaps you want to know what's in my head when I do something like this and decide about how I do that, because this idea of putting the photo in between of the layers has also another reason than only to don't cover up everything here. Yeah, of course, that is a thing that happens automatically if you put that below the layers, but it has another reason. The photo is a square, isn't it? Would work with a rectangle as well, or my thoughts would be the same. And when I have the cat here or a person, I like when on the photo itself there's also some interest and something like a little cluster. And with this method, and especially with gluing the buttons here, we get that in one step, and we get that automatically. Because this here is now on the photo, and when I then take the button, and here I want to also, I think, have 3 because this is so long. When I then put the button here, then the button or buttons, when I use more than one, are like the focal point of this little cluster. Meaning, here, for example, look, I think here it's the best where you can see it. What's below the buttons is like a little cluster in the edge or the corner of the picture. And these now give the cluster the top layer and somehow a focal point. And with that, you have like a focal point on the cluster and the focal point, which is the image. Yeah. And when you then put that to your page later, you have this as an interesting image and as somehow something where the eye wants to go, and you have this as a decoration, and at the same time it's like another focal point. Do you know what I mean? And if you are new to junk journaling, I can also tell you that it's really easy to decide where to put these things, because here, for example, let's do this first, because if you have never done it before, perhaps it's then a little hard to understand. Imagine the button was not here. We have the fabric, we have this longer strip of lace, and we have this white here, the white here, and then we have the nest of this thread, which is black. And the nest already gives something like a circle here, where the eye goes to first when we only look to the fabric and lace arrangement here and ignore the photo. And when you then take the button and place that directly on top, the button is in this little nest and the eye can concentrate onto this center here. The button makes the center of this cluster then more concrete somehow. Here it is similar, but the thread and the contrast and this nest is here on top. On the top. If I would have taken the button and placed it, you know, in the middle of the nest here, that would look perhaps a little weird, because then the button would sit here, and that is really high and in one line with the picture here. You can then try to take the button and put that to the like line where black and white in this case meets. I have placed it here where this longer strip of white lace meets the black here. So this is, you know, if you would make a line, then the line would be here. And it's directly on this line. The same from the thread to this lighter area here. It's on the line, and a little part of the button is over, I mean here, and not over, on the one side of the line, and the other part of the button is on the other side of the line. So I have an invisible line here and here from the colors which are under the button. And then if you have that in mind, the position for the button is really easy to find. Yeah, so that is not like a rule where you think, oh, I have to always think about where's the line, where's the line. If you don't have a line, then, you know, place the button where you want it, where you think it looks nice. But that can be a little trick to find like the right position, because, and I do it like this because what is the right position? Yeah, you have to like it and no one else. But yeah, I think, yeah, what shall I say? Here, for example, I think that it is somehow a rule that can help you to decide where to put things. I mean, how often are we sitting there with tiny things like buttons or something else, and we can't decide where we want to put them? And I experience that very often, that I then put it 1 millimeter to the right, 1 millimeter to the top, then I don't like it, I take everything off, and that can go for hours, and I still can't decide that. So for me, it's helpful to make myself like some rules, but not to have rules, because I hate rules. And junk journaling is something that has no rules. But if you make yourself some rules that can help you, then that are good rules, aren't they? So here, for example, it's the same thing. We have this strip of the white material here, and the button is like in the middle approximately, because this little piece here is going over the photo. So I want a connection between the button and this piece. And this, like, this color looks like a little bit like frayed burlap, this embroidery thread thing, that is like under the button, and it comes out there, and it looks like the button was sewn with this thread. And this thread then goes down here, but the main point is this. Yeah, and with that, this little cluster thing makes sense somehow. Holy cow. Hopefully that is not too confusing. So let's add some splatters. I want to have the tiniest amount of splatters here, but you know, I can't do a project without splatters. That wouldn't be my project. So I'm going to take my splatter brush and put some here, and I do only a few here, just to make me happy in this moment, because without splatters I am not happy. But I don't want to overload this with splatters, and I don't want to finish this with splatters. Sometimes you think splatters are the finishing touches on a project, and that is often totally true. But in this case, imagine, please, you have these in your stash, and then later on you make a journal and you think, I want to have black splatters in my journal. Black on the photo would work as well. And now you think, and then you think, oh no, I have white splatters here. That would be not so good. I mean, you know, there's no, yeah, you can always solve those problems. But imagine you have this on your junk journal page, and then you think, I want to splatter to this area with black. What to do with this then? If you only have a few white splatters here, it's no problem to add some black splatters additionally, so that it then looks that the white splatters are meant to be on the photo, and here are the black splatters, or whatever color, then that is good. But if you have, for example, something, you know, a combination which is not black and white, but other colors, for example, it would be really hard to include this into the rest. And that is perhaps like a tiny problem, but the bigger problem in my eyes is if you want to make a connection between the page tab and what's on your page later, then it can be helpful to leave these completely without splatters, and then take that. And now let me take this one here where nothing or nearly nothing of the white splatters is, And then let's imagine we want to have black on the page, because then you can just take your empty, I mean, with empty I mean page tab without splatters. That is what I mean with by saying empty. And if you then have this here and it is attached, holy cow, how can I do that? Let me just put this out of the way. So let's imagine this was your collaged or other junk journal page. You have journaled here or whatever, and you have attached the page tab here. And then you think some black splatters would be great, but I want to connect the page tab more with the page itself. Then you could take your splatter brush, some black paint, just a little more, and you can start here, splatter to the page, and splatter to the photo here, and then you have the connection between both of these elements, the tab and the page. And here it doesn't bother me that there are white splatters, because it makes it more interesting, and I can see the white splatters are belonging to the photo. You could even do it the other way around. You could take more white and splatter that here to get the connection. But if you don't have splatters on the photo now, then later on it's easier. Yeah. And if you now have splatters here and splatter later as well, it could happen that you have too many splatters on the photo. Do you know what I mean? So, as I said, that is only a tiny problem, and perhaps it's only in my head and no problem for you. That would make me happy if that was no problem for you, because that is, you know, then it's always good when it's only my problem, because I don't want you to have problems. So that's it. Now we have these little guys here, and I'm really excited to use these in one of my future journals. Until now, I don't know where these will go. I will put them into my stash, because I also want to build my stash a little bit. So I want to have things that I can take, because they are already ready to go. And that's also why I made these. So I hope this is an idea for you as well. I would be really happy about your feedback. So if you want to tell me what you think about these, then please leave a comment, and have a very creative day. See you the next time. Bye bye.